Hey guys, Techniverse here. This is going to be my first and probably a long series of rants on the upcoming Wheel of Time television show. So if you're not into that, go ahead and skip this video. But I'm a pretty big fan. I've read through it 2.5 times. I'm on my third read through right now. I am looking forward to the show. So don't get your hopes up that I'm just going to trash it. I do have some concerns, and I want to talk about those mainly because of the political and social environment right now. And I'll explain that in just a second. But first off, I wanted to say that this video is not going to be like the synopsis videos I'm going to do for each book going down the road. This video shouldn't contain too many spoilers. There are going to be a few broad plot points that are covered, but they are also covered right away in the books, just to kind of get you familiar with the world that we're talking about and the political climate in the world itself. So, that said, on the note of politics, we're talking about a world that is run, well, the civilized part of the world is run mostly by women. The main leader of the main province that all three of these people are from, all five of these main characters are from, a city called, a town called the Two Rivers, and that is in a province that is run by a queen and has always been run by a queen. Now, that may seem singular in itself, but at the beginning of this story, a lady is going to show up in this village called the Two Rivers, and that lady in the TV show is going to be played by Rosamund Pike, and I think that's an excellent casting job. Her name in the book series is Moiraine, and she's one of the central characters, and she is actually, I guess, what you would traditionally consider a witch. She is a magic user, and she belongs to a group called the Aes Sedai, and the Aes Sedai are an all-female group of power wielders. They have their own hierarchy and their own political system, and they tend to pull the strings around the world. The queens of the main province in the show that all these people are from actually sends her daughter to train with the Aes Sedai and see if she can wield the power, and if she can, she's attempts to attain as high of a level in their organization as she can to bring prestige to her country. And pretty much all the other royalty in the civilized part of the world bow to these Aes Sedai. So it is an entirely female-run government, an entirely female-run world, and I think that that could be a very good thing for the show's popularity in society now. But a little bit more backstory on that. In the preface to the story, you learn about this guy named Lews Therin Telamon. And Lews Therin is the man they refer to as the dragon. He is a male Aes Sedai. So, and this is the thing that takes a little bit of explaining through flashbacks throughout the show, but it's not really a spoiler. It is a main plot point. A long time ago, the Aes Sedai were male and female. There was some serious conflict within the political system of the Aes Sedai itself, with them sharing power between males and females. And the magical power that they draw on, the one power, is comprised of a female component and a male component. So, Lews Therin actually was driven crazy by one of the Forsaken, a man called Ishmael. Now, keep in mind, like I said, I'm not spoiling anything. This is all, like, literally the first pages of the first book. So, the thing is Ishmael drove Lews Therin mad using the power, and the Dark One, or the Devil, or basically the dark side of the universe, or the darker forces within the Wheel of Time, corrupted the male source. So, in doing that, it ensured that any male who touched the source would become corrupted and eventually go mad. So, Lews Therin himself, they actually called a kinslayer. When he was driven mad, he went crazy and killed his entire family, his wife, his children, everybody in his castle. And when he came to, he didn't really know what had happened. He just found everybody dead and didn't realize it was him. Ishmael then shows up and gives him back his memory, and it drives him to go crazy and causes what they call the breaking of the world. Now, during the breaking of the world, it literally is what it says it is. Everything on the planet gets not necessarily destroyed, but shifted. the lands themselves change, and on the spot where he basically destroyed himself with the one power, a giant mountain raises up, and they call that mountain the Dragon Mount. And after that, men aren't allowed to touch the power. They're not allowed to have any power at all. Women are the only ones who are allowed to use magic, and there's actually a faction within the Aes Sedai called the Red Aja, which hunts down male channelers and does what they call gentling, where they sever them from the source. And this itself causes the men to go mad, but without the access to the magical power, they can't cause any damage. So the witches see it as it's better to cut them off and have them go crazy than to have them go crazy with all that power in their hands. So this has a lot to do with what's going on now in society, and like I said, the way that males are almost demonized. I mean, it's not, and I'm not complaining. I mean, we've had our day in the sun, and I personally believe in equality, but the social connotations of this structure are very, very vast and deep. It says a lot about the climate now, and you got to keep in mind this was written 20 years ago, 30, almost 40 years ago now. So it's interesting that the story is dominated mostly by female characters, and that there are a lot of male readers who say that Robert Jordan can't write a female to save his life. I found that to be kind of sexist, because personally I don't see a difference in the way that he wrote. He writes everybody from their own perspective. Not necessarily a male or female perspective, but from the perspective of the life that they've lived up until that point, with his sort of filter on it. And of course, that may make it so it's not exactly accurate to the female frame of mind in every instance, but he does a good job of not really putting that into it. There is a society out in what they call the Aiel Wastes, and this society is a desert-dwelling society. The interesting thing with this is Robert Jordan went the opposite direction of most people who create a desert society, and most people would give them dark skin from the sun and dark hair. But these are fair-skinned people with red hair. They are some of the fiercest warriors on the planet, and it is prophesied that one day they would come over the wall, and there would be an Ailman born on the slopes of the Dragon Mount, and that child would grow up to be the Dragon Reborn. Now, I mentioned the Aiel because they have a very interesting society. The men and women are equal. They take on different roles, but ultimately, one of them can't do anything without the other. That's not necessarily true. They're strong enough individually, but the strongest sect among the Aiel is what they call the Wise Women. And they are females who can use the power but haven't been taken by the Aes Sedai, so they grew up in the wastes and they grew up using the power in a different way. The Aiel men who can touch the power do basically they sacrifice themselves and go north to where it's said that the Dark One lives, and basically try to die before they go mad, die an honorable death in battle fighting the darkness. So this society is really interesting because it gives equal power to the men and the women when it comes to decision making, but ultimately the women are the ones with the wisdom. And that's not to say that the women don't fight. The wise women are some of the fiercest warriors, and there's also a sect of female warriors among the Aiel who play pretty heavily in the story, called the Maidens of the Spear, and they're pretty awesome. There's a little bit of a, I guess, in-joke. They use a secret language among themselves where they use hand signs to talk to each other without words. And it's an interesting communication because it's only allowed between the Spear Maidens. So if a male even mentions it or tries to ask what they're saying or brings it up, they get really offended. The Aiel have really, really strict codes of honor. They follow something called G-E-To, which means honor and obligation. And they follow it strictly to the point where they punish themselves for things that they feel they've done wrong, and if they feel that they've been dishonored, they're obligated to fix it. So it's a very interesting system that I suppose works really well out in the waste, but wouldn't really work in civilized society. Anyway, I'm starting to lose track of the point here. So Basically, this story, there are several powerful players, male and female, and in fact, the leader of the Aes Sedai is called the Amerlin Seat, and over the course of the story, you see, I believe, four of them. So power changes hands. They're kind of always scheming between what they call the Ajas, which is the different sects of the Aes Sedai, and there are uh, all different colors of Ajas, and each one represents a different thing. The green is a battle Aja. Um, the white are the diplomats, basically. The red are they basically hate males and they hunt down male channelers. The blue are politicians and schemers, basically. Um, the brown are studious. They're librarians and researchers and stuff like that. And then there's uh, uh, the gray Aja as well. But then there's a secret sect called the Black Aja that nobody believes exists, but it does, and they're distributed basically throughout the Aes Sedai. The darkness plays a heavy theme in this, the fight between darkness and light. So the Black Aja is basically dark friends. That's what they call people who worship the Dark One. They call them dark friends. Basically, the dark friends that have infiltrated the Aes Sedai. So, pretty interesting story. There is a lot of politics in the books, and I think that's one of the reasons that some people find them a little bit dull or hard to get through. But that was one of the most interesting things I found. That and the intricacies in the power. Now, the power becomes corrupted, and for thousands of years, males can't use it, and male channelers go mad. But this Ailman, who's supposed to be born on the slopes of the Dragon Mount, is supposed to be Lews Therin Telamon reborn, the Dragon Reborn. So, when this happens, not to give too much away, but basically, he's brought to the two rivers, and raised there. So the story picks up with Moiraine showing up at the two rivers, finding three boys that are around the age that she believes the dragon would be, and taking them with her on a journey to find out which one is the hero. The interesting thing is they all turn out to be heroes, and there are two females from their village that follow them as well, and they turn out to be heroes in their own right, if not almost in a more glorious way. One of them ends up pretty much saving the day at the very last moment. And I don't want to give away too much, but they're both super awesome, and they're going to be great role models basically for girls going through a lot of things and seeing changes, because these are younger characters and you're going to see them evolve. And the same with the males. One of the funniest things is in the books, when you read from the perspective of the three main character males, Matt, Perrin, and Rand, each one of them basically thinks about the other two the same way. So Rand will say something like, oh, in his head, he'll say, man, I don't have Perrin's way with women. And Perrin will say the same thing about Matt, and Matt will say the same thing about Rand. So it's funny because it kind of equates to the fact that everybody is equal. It's going to be very interesting because the story does hinge on a male channeler, basically holding all of the power and deciding whether to use it for good or for bad. So it's kind of sexist in the way that the women hold all the power in the world, but at the end of the day, it still is going to come down to one man and his decision. But it's also kind of the opposite of that. I mean, the only way he finds he can cleanse the one power, and he does eventually clean it and make it usable for men again, the only way he figures out he can do that is with the help of a woman. It takes both sides to balance it out. So without women, there is nothing in this story that could move forward. It would easily end with him being destroyed. That said, there are some women in the story that are pretty power hungry and bad examples of what women could do in positions of authority as well. So it's not just males. It goes both ways. So like I said, I made this video because I was kind of worried that people weren't going to like the fact that this is a female-run society, and all of a sudden it all hinges on the success and survival of one male character. But I wanted to point out that if you feel this way throughout the story, you need to sit back and watch, because there are a lot of intricacies that play into it, and there is no one character in this story that saves the world. Basically, they all have their own stories, and those stories are pretty much woven together in a pattern that makes up the whole of the story. And if you pluck one thread out of that story, the others unravel. And if you've read the books, you know exactly what I'm talking about right now. If you haven't read the books, you'll understand what I just said a little bit more after watching the show or maybe diving into a book or two. But basically, the Wheel of Time is there's something they call the age lace, which is everybody's life is a thread, and those threads intertwine to make patterns. And sometimes the pattern would still be noticeable if one thread moved just a little bit, but sometimes the pattern, they call it tavarine, where sometimes the pattern reforms itself around the choices of one thread. So when Rand decides to do something, he tugs on the threads around him, and they reform into the pattern as he is forming the pattern, and the pattern is forming him. So it sounds kind of complicated, and I might not have done the best job of explaining it, but this is a story about yin and yang. It is about males and females working together in order to lead to a world of prosperity and finding a way to bring the world back into balance and accept each other's power, accept the fact that male and female should be equal. I will tell you, at the end of the story, the Aiel Society plays a lot into the future of the world, and that's good because they're very honorable people and have equality among men and women. Although I will say, not sure if people are going to like the fact that they're kind of polygamous. I mean, a lot of Aiel have sister wives, so a chief will be married to 2, sometimes even 3 women, and some people might gawk at that, but don't be taken aback by that either. Realize that if you watch and pay attention, it is the women who choose the man, and they choose whether or not to go and allow another woman or ask another woman to join. It really is not up to the men. Men cannot propose to women in their society. Women have to do it. So that's interesting. There's also a couple other societies, and we're not going to get into the Shan-Chan or anything like that, which, by the way, is run by an empress, which is a female. And, I mean, we can talk a little bit about the Wave Riders. They are from an island called Tremel King. They're basically seafarers, and they are run pretty much all by women as well. So the Aes Sedai basically are so obsessed with power, they went through and collected every female that showed talents of the power and brought them to the tower. Their numbers have been dwindling for years now because less and less power users have come out, because you can't basically create new, stronger bloodlines by combining the male and female power, because the males who have the power are killed. So it's an interesting dynamic, but it forces a lot of the outer tribes, the people who don't live in the main central core of the continent, to hide their power users. So each other society, the Aiel and the Wave Riders, they have their own power users, but they're like trained each in their own individual thing that they've used for generations while living in their territory, and they're not really classically trained in all of the arts like the Aes Sedai would be. So it's very interesting. We're going to wrap this video up now. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. We're going to have some future videos. We're going to go over synopsis of basically each of the books, because when the show does come, I want to do a compare and contrast. I know the show's not going to be exactly like the books. I'm not upset about any of the choices the show's made casting so far, but in the next Wheel of Time video we are going to talk about the cast, and I'll tell you a little bit how I feel about each one. So far, so good, honestly. There's a lot of people getting mad about race swapping a couple people, but honestly, at the end of the day, this story is a story about all people, and the funny thing is the main character is from a different part of the world anyway, so for them to say that there wouldn't be black people in the Two Rivers is kind of ridiculous, because there shouldn't be an ailment either. So and furthermore, it says in there that, and I'm not going to get into it. We'll talk about that in the next episode. Like I said, stop on back, guys. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and we'll see you soon. And as always, guys, I am Technivorous. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button. You can subscribe right here by clicking on the icon. And I put a couple videos up in the corner. One of them is going to be my latest video, my latest upload, and the other one is going to be what YouTube recommends for you. So feel free to check those out. Don't forget to hit that bell for notifications down below, and we'll see you guys next time.